The dark, rainy night, a terrifying story, an interesting and horror story. What's the secret? Let's explore.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a total masterclass in psychological terror. In this explainer, we'll be breaking down the anatomy of suspense by looking at a deeply chilling folklore tale. It's the story of a guy named Deepak. He's just taking a late-night walk home in the pouring rain, but it quickly spirals into a fight for his sanity and, honestly, his life. We're going to look at exactly how a narrative systematically breaks down a rational skeptic's mind. So grab a seat and let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for the breakdown today. First, we'll explore the folklore of the Chalawa. Then, we'll look at setting the dark atmosphere, the skeptic's psychological shift, escalating the tension, and finally, the climax and resolution.
All right, part one, the folklore of the Chalava, or rooting fear in tradition.
You know, introducing local folklore right out of the gate is such a brilliant way to raise the stakes. It anchors the horror in a really recognizable, deep-seated cultural fear. To fully grasp what our protagonist Deepak is unknowingly up against, we absolutely have to define this monster. A Chalava is an illusionary spirit, heavily embedded in local folklore. It's this supernatural entity that specifically hunts lonely travelers on dark, desolate paths. But here's the kicker. It doesn't just jump out and attack. It tricks you. It deceives and traps its victims by weaponizing their own senses and empathy against them. By defining this right at the start, the story creates incredible dramatic irony. We, the audience, know exactly what kind of monstrous trap Deepak is wandering into, even as he's totally brushing it off as pure nonsense.
Moving on to part two, setting the dark atmosphere and building the dread.
Now, what's really interesting about the author's approach here is that they don't just place Deepak in a setting, they literally weaponize the environment against him. First off, we've got this relentless, heavy rain. It isn't just a moody backdrop, it actively impairs his vision and hearing, making him super vulnerable. Second, we have complete total isolation. Deepak works late, he completely ignores a stark warning from his colleague Nathan Uncle not to travel alone, and to top it all off, he misses the absolute last bus. He is entirely stripped of modern safety nets. And third, the sudden lightning flashes. The author brilliantly uses lightning not just to make things look spooky, but as a severe distraction. Things appear and disappear in the blink of an eye, instantly destabilizing his and our sense of reality.
Just listen to this incredibly visceral quote from the story. Raindrops combined with lightning felt like knives hitting the entire body. Wow. The suspense here is so tactile, right? It's intense physical discomfort. The author is actively forcing us to feel the hostile, punishing nature of the environment. It lays down this perfect, heavy foundation of dread way before the supernatural stuff even enters the picture.
Which brings us to part three, the skeptic's psychological shift, breaking the mind.
This right here is the core character arc driving the entire engine of suspense. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive contrast between where he starts and where he ends up. Initially, Deepak leans super heavily on his modern logic. He literally dismisses his uncle's warnings as just useless talk. But by the end of the night, his practical worldview is completely shattered, and he is just paralyzed by fear. The true suspense in this narrative is generated not just by a scary monster, but by watching this deeply confident, strictly logical man slowly and completely lose his grip on reality.
Let's head into part four, escalating the tension, the path to terror.
Notice how the dread just compounds hour by agonizing hour. It starts early, right around 8 p.m., with that grave warning from Nathan Uncle. Fast forward to 10 p.m. and the missed bus leaves him totally stranded. By 11:30, things get weird. He meets a mysterious girl in a pink sari who claims she's also scared and just needs someone to walk with. Then, at 1 a.m., the auditory hallucinations kick in. They start hearing this distant, super creepy singing of an old poem. And finally, by 2 a.m., it's just pure psychological torture, as the girl repeatedly disappears and reappears. Every single one of these events isolates Deepak further and just chips away at his rational explanations.
Which leads us to this absolutely chilling line of dialogue. The mysterious girl literally turns to him and openly says, "Yes, sir, I am the Chalava." No way, right? She tells him the terrifying truth right to his face, but, and this is the crazy part, she frames it as a joke. This is such a masterful suspense technique. It cranks his paranoia up to 11 because the actual lethal threat is walking right next to him, actively mocking him, and he is still trying his hardest to rationalize it all the way as just a bad prank. The Chalava actually executes this breakdown of reality in three very specific, deliberate steps. Step 1, Deepak rationalizes his mounting fear as just being spooked by the dark and feeling lonely. Totally normal response. Step 2, the illusion starts invading his senses. He hears an old poem being sung out in the middle of nowhere, which creates this intense auditory confusion. And then step 3, total geographical disorientation. Despite the fact that he's been walking straight forward for ages, he realizes the physical road is looping. He starts recognizing the scenery. It's like a giant puzzle he can't solve. He is literally trapped in a maze made entirely by the spirit.
Let's move to our final section and see how this builds. Part 5, the climax and resolution, the monster revealed.
Okay, so all those subtle, slow burn psychological games, they end right here. The illusion drops completely. Suddenly, Deepak hears footsteps right behind him, and this terrifyingly familiar voice taunting him, telling him he's never getting out. He turns around, and the seemingly innocent girl in the pink sari has transformed. She is now this huge, ferocious beast with glowing red eyes. The author expertly pivots the whole story here from a creeping psychological thriller into a high-stakes, lethal, physical threat. The suspense just absolutely peaks as this highly educated mind is finally forced to accept that this impossible local folklore is an absolute terrifying reality.
So the crucial point is how on earth he actually survives this. Deepak runs in sheer white-knuckle terror, but here's the thing. His modern education doesn't save him. His airtight, practical logic doesn't save him either. What actually saves his life is suddenly remembering the Patli, a traditional protective amulet that Nithin Uncle gave him way back at the beginning of the night. It's literally this tiny, specific artifact of local folklore and tradition that physically breaks the Chalava's illusion and finally allows him to escape into the night.
And that brings us to the ultimate, lingering question that this explainer leaves us with. As we sit here right now in our safe, modern, highly educated world, totally insulated by all our technology, if you were stripped of every bit of it on a dark, rainy, desolate road, would you have survived, or would your stubborn reliance on pure logic be the exact thing the Chalava uses to trap you too? It's a genuinely fascinating reminder of exactly why these old folklore tales endure, and why a dark, rainy night is probably always going to make us look over our shoulder. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your amulets close, and I'll catch you next time.